I look like my mother, she looks like my father, how I live in California, she lives in Connecticut, that I did this for a living and she did that I had girls and she had boys. And my parents, for some reason, find this interesting to constantly compare how my sister and I are so different, not wrong or right, but different. But when I look at my sister, I see that our lives have moved in incredible parallels. And I think we actually have more in common. When I look at our emotional experiences, how we handle things, how we approach things, how we think, how we feel. So comparisons are a matter of perspective. What if you could look at every single religion, every single person, every single political system, every single situation on this earth and in even different galaxies, because of course there are 400 billion planets in our Milky Way. We are not the only intelligent life. How could we possibly be? I think it'd be more scary to think that we are than we're not. Wouldn't that actually be scary to think that we are the only intelligent life? That this was it? I take so much comfort in knowing that there are much, much higher, more developed dimensions of time and space and civilization out there that are here to guide us. That would feel quite orphaned, I think. So what if you could take on a perspective and start seeing in everywhere you go, every person that you meet, every situation that you come across, instead of deciding how it is opposite to you or different than you or in contrast to you and your thoughts and your beliefs, what if you could start seeing the similarities? Aha, then you might actually start seeing mirrors, and that might not be comfortable. I'm not always comfortable looking at mirrors. One of the things I read in that channeled message that they were shared with us is that blame comes from guilt. So when we are guilty, we've perceived ourselves to do something, and we self-judge, you know, it's really hard to look at ourselves and really be accountable sometimes. I've had a good exercise in that the last couple of years. But we tend to blame the other person. So I would invite you to take inventory and observation that when you are blaming somebody for something, perhaps this is simply a mirror of something that you feel guilty about. And if you are just brave enough for a moment to take stock in what it is that you feel guilty about and understand that maybe you don't have a reason to feel guilty, maybe you're just having a human experience. Maybe all the decisions that you've made and all the thoughts and processes that you have were simply a reflection of who you were in that given moment, with the tools that you had and the beliefs that you had. And what if it was just perfect in that moment? Every decision you made, what if it was just perfect? What if you let yourself off for making all of these quote mistakes? And what if you didn't make any mistakes? What if you just made decisions? And if you do that for yourself, you would so easily and gracefully and naturally, without even thinking, be able to do that for others. And then you would look at others and say, well, they just made that decision based on who they were in that moment, in that time, based on all the tools that they had and all the beliefs that were existing in their paradigm, and they made the best decision that they knew how. And what if there wasn't right and wrong? And what if there wasn't credit and blame? So duality is the thing that keeps us in the trenches. Higher consciousness, awareness, awakening, looking at things from what I call the mile-high view of the universal perspective, duality starts to fade and to have less impact and less truth. And if you look at everything that's happened in the last 10 years, does everybody realize how many spiritual centers have opened up in the last 10 years? How many people have left their corporate jobs and gone and done something else and started living these dreams? There has been a massive awakening in the last 10 years that would not have otherwise possibly been with the same intensity had we not had the events look at what the internet and YouTube and texting and cell phones, something happens in Iran in a square where a young girl, his life is taken, and the whole world knows about it in 5 minutes. There is nowhere that these events can now hide because we are all aware of them more, and awareness is the first step in understanding the truth of it and the different perspectives, and we are becoming more aware with everything that we do. And it's a beautiful thing. Sometimes transition can be hard. Sometimes you're in a situation where you keep saying to yourself, oh, I can handle it, it's not that bad, it's not that hard, I can suppress these desires that I want to get out of this relationship, let's say, for an example. And so you stay in this relationship for years, and all of a sudden something happens and you wake up and you come home and you find that person has been unfaithful, or they leave, or some huge dramatic event brings it to your face, and you can no longer continue to live in that kind of denial. And it hurts, and it's shocking, and there's a grieving period, but then you start to move beyond it. What if we could look at 9/11 as that kind of perspective, that maybe we were all living kind of in denial, and maybe this event, shocking, painful, dramatic, and with aspects of severe grieving to it, but what if out in the aftermath there's an awakening and a realigning and a new perspective and a new awareness, and a new way of looking at things, and a new way of embracing things. We can give into gratitude for all of those that went into the heavens that day. I remember reading a channeled message from a woman who was a medium that connected with a gentleman who lost his life on the night of the Titanic. And this gentleman that crossed over on the night of the Titanic told this medium, don't be sad. That night, the heavens opened up as 1,000 souls ascended simultaneously together in unity and in friendship. As so many thousands of people died within an hour of each other, and the heavens opened up, and he said, you should have seen the lights and the souls that were ascending. If you could see it from our perspective, it was a beautiful thing. Well, I would say on 9/11 and then all the aftermaths afterwards, the heavens opened up that day. And what we saw on the ground looked like chaos, but what was going on in the ethers was a beautiful thing, as they all went up together in unison and in friendship and camaraderie, knowing that they had been there that day on a soul contract level, volunteering for something that was going to help humanity shift. So let's take a moment, and I want to get into gratitude and appreciation and honor for everybody that crossed over that day, all the ones afterward in Iraq and Afghanistan, and all of our soldiers. But even going back to every single war that every single mankind has experienced, in all places, all time, all dimension, anytime there's been some kind of volunteer and moving forward, let's just take a moment of reflection and peace and say thank you to those that volunteered to do that. Holding space for them. Allowing ourselves to see them in honor and in gratitude. Promising to see this event from the universal perspective, so that their efforts were not in vain. That the families who lost them and endured that grieving process were not in vain. And not just the events of 9/11, but all wars of all mankind, stretching through all time and space, honoring those and their families. Understanding what they did in order to help the growth of humanity, to understand the divinity of life, and how to appreciate it gain perspective, and using loss as a form of moving forward rather than a time to reassert duality. Releasing the bonds of duality, seeing light go through them, seeing the beauty of the light dissipate the perceptions of duality. Thanking them and honoring them, and so it is. Do apologize for being out of Kleenex yesterday. So sorry. Ran out of Kleenex and coffee. My apologies for anybody who needs either. Thank you for sharing that moment. I wasn't quite prepared for the power of it until it came through me. So I'm going to just recuperate here and let you go.
Do you want to say something about anything? No?
No, I'm going to recuperate here and I'm going to let you talk for a few minutes. So, thank you for sharing that channeled message that you received not quite 10 years ago, a week after the event. I read it when you first sent it to me in the email. I read it again when we printed it out and were making sure it had a place in our September article in our magazine. And I read it when the magazine came out, and I read it again last night. And each time, so I encourage you to read that article several times, because each time I read it, of course things go into a deeper level, the more our consciousness sees them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing to me because 10 years ago I was not where I am now on my spiritual path. And I really want to acknowledge that you were in a place where a lot of us are arriving today. So I say to you, thank you for being a sage in this area. And I'm not calling you an old man.
It's okay.
I'm probably as old as you are. But thank you for holding space at a time and place before many of us had awoken. And what was written to you 10 years ago was the kinds of things that we're seeing written now. But it was quite original at the time. How did when that message came through, what did it do for you? Because you were, as the rest of us were, in such a state of...
It wasn't so much that it did something for me, because as you mentioned, I've done spiritual work more or less my whole life. And so I've learned to look at things very differently. Many years ago I asked one of my teachers, said, if you want me to be in this planet, in this body, I want to become a cosmic clown. Mm-hmm. And it had real value to me, because I had written a lot of different things, and the writing became almost a blessing and a curse. Because while I'm writing it, I access a different state of consciousness and awareness. And at the same time, it's like giving birth. Imagine if a woman's going to give birth and she cannot give birth after 9 months. It's an uncomfortable position, right? And she might not survive. Her body or soul might not survive that, right? The soul always survives, but it's just human language. And the same thing in a creative process, and when you have a lot of creativity, and the circle has to somehow complete itself by sharing it with as many people as possible. It doesn't necessarily have to become a bestseller if it's a book or a painting, or it doesn't have to be seen by millions, but it needs to complete itself in the sense that it's available for a larger audience. And that's the giving birth, right? So I have been, kind of living in that process for many, many, many years, because I have so many messages and so many writings that still a lot of people haven't even heard about. And so when 9/11 happened, it was just a natural response to my heart and my soul to express something that I knew was very foreign to most people at that moment. But you know, when we are on a spiritual journey, we all on a spiritual journey, another thing I really want to share here today is that in order to really understand what is happening today on the planet, within us and all around us, we have to change our vocabulary. Because if you listen to yourself, or listen to your friends and colleagues, or whoever, your children, talking with you, you can see that everything we say is based upon a duality, like Reverend Danielle shared so beautifully here today. It's based upon fear and anxiety and separation, right? So we incorporate in every sentence, in our way of looking at ourselves, this feeling of not being good enough, being unworthy, basically, and put it in one simple word. And you start becoming aware of it, you will find that the English language particularly is so inundated with negative sentences that we're not even aware of it. For example, you know, in my book, Time is Promised to No One, it's about a young man who dies, who actually is told he has 3 months to live when he's 33 years of age. And he starts going through his life, and he starts having these amazing experiences. And I think you read it, Rob, right? You read the book, right? Oh, okay. Anyway,
I look forward to reading that.
Anyway, so he's thinking about the word funeral. Now,